because I think that goes into Zoom, and I don't know if I can link it or something, but at worst, I'll put this onto my, so there's a disclaimer there, yeah, I've got it, he can do that recording. So what I'm now going to do, I'm now going to share my screen, and this is an excerpt from chapter 9 of my book. What can you see about the title? What's the title? It says, Identifying Threats, Attacks, and Vulnerabilities. Does it say go in depth to these things? No. So what CompTIA is going to do with this, they are going to give you a scenario. And from that scenario, you've got to identify the type of attack or how you're going to stop it. Does that make sense? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through some of the most common attacks that are in the test at this moment in time. I'm going to cover the attacks where from this chapter, most of the points are scored. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at password attacks. And we've got dictionary, we've got brute force, we've got hybrid, and we've got password spraying. And I'm going to do each of these at a time. Now, with the dictionary attack, a lot of the time there's an output like this inside the CompTIA test. And you can see the dictionary has got sneaked, sneaked, sneaker, snored, and snoring. So it's as if it's proper words from a dictionary, but they're sequential. So whenever you get something like this, always focus on the right-hand column. Never focus on all of this shit before it. Just focus on the type of passwords. Now, if you're going to get in the CompTIA exam a dictionary attack, you need to see the password. If I don't see the password, I can't pick dictionary because you can't see the format. Is everybody quite happy with that? Then we're going to move on to brute force attack. Now, what is a brute force attack? A brute force is every available combination. So the brute force attack might run for 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks. And what he's doing, any combination in the world, it just takes a long time to get there. Now, how can I stop a brute force attack? There's 2 ways. The first one is account lockout. So if you do account lockout with a value of 3, it means the attacker has got 3 different attempts, and after that, it will lock him out. Now, I'm going to share this, and the other one I want to go over is a technique called salting. So let me just teach you salting. So we're going to look at salting. Now, what does salting do? It adds random characters to a password. So if we look at Ian and we look at Bob, and they've both got a poor password of help, we'll call it help me. And he's actually using help me as well. Now, if we salt it, the salt might put AB2345E1Z, and it might be BCD2468 Alpha Bravo. Now, with the salt, this is just, this is not actually salting, this is a representation. But look at Ian's password. It's gone from 4 characters to 8 characters to 12 characters to 15 characters. So there's 15 different combinations. And for this one, it's gone from 3 to 8 to 12 to 16 characters. So what that would mean, first of all, the brute force would be attempting to get something with 15 characters or 16 characters. But brute force is doing every single combination. So it's going to slow down the time to compute it. Now, exam tip. If you want to store passwords securely, you're always going to, when you're in the exam, choose salting. Does anybody want to take a picture, just in case? It's better if you watch my screens and you take a picture at the end. I'll say if you want to take a picture. Does anybody want a picture of this? Are we okay? Remember, I'm going to try and put the video up there afterwards. So 1, 2, 3, that one's gone. Let's come back onto the screen and see where we are now. Now, in the CompTIA exam, the brute force attack, you do not need to see the password. So brute force, you don't have to see the password. But if you were to see the password, it'd probably be complex. Now watch this. 1 attempt, 2 attempt, 3 attempt, lockout. Now, why is that? That is the most common thing for people. 3 or 5 password attempts and lockout. So a brute force, 1 attempt, 2 attempt, 3 attempts, lockout. 1 attempt, 2 attempts, 3 attempts, lockout. If you see that, that would be a brute force attack. Now, a hybrid has never been tested in the last 5 years. But what is a hybrid attack? It's a brute force attack. So it's a dictionary followed by brute force. So it's a combination of two. How does that seem, guys? Let's go and look at the next one. And the next one is password spraying, where the attacker will get a list of employees and they'll try and get the standard naming convention. And what's the standard naming convention? It's the format of people's email address or username. And they'll try common passwords. Now let's look at common passwords. In this one here, we forget about the user and we look on the left-hand side. Password 123, password 123. Let me in or change me or allow. So these are the most common passwords. Why would this password here not be a dictionary? What do you think, guys? Have you ever seen a dictionary with numbers at the end of the words? Nope, neither have I. So password spraying is the most common passwords. But once again, if you're doing password spraying, you need to actually see the password itself. So both dictionary attack and password spraying, you cannot pick those two attacks unless you can physically see the password inside the exam. How are we doing, guys? So let's look at one which comes up quite often, and this is going to be a pass the hash attack. The rest of the attacks I'm going to do, guys, I'm going to be talking and talking the whole lot. So let's go in here and we're going to look at pass the hash. Now, for a pass the hash, here is a server over here, and it's a domain controller. So what is a domain controller? It's a machine that holds the passwords. But the authentication is very weak. And the authentication is using NTLM. And what do you know about NTLM? It's unencrypted. So therefore, if you've got a domain controller, this would be NT 4.0. And this would be about 1999. So you can see that they're still measuring something that's ancient. And what will happen here is the attacker will try and get admin credentials to get onto the domain controller, and he will actually try and steal the password database. So it could be Windows System 32, it could be the SAM, it could be LSASS. So he tries and steals the password database, which is unencrypted. Then what he can do, he can use a rainbow table. Now, what is a rainbow table? It's a password and it's got a hash value, and the hash value is hexadecimal, and it's extremely long. So let's say inside here, I've got a password which is Ian, and his password is pass1. Now, when you're in the CompTIA Security Plus exam and you're trying to match hashes, you will only look at the last 3 digits on the right-hand side. So here, let's say this is a hash and it's fairly long and it's a 363. Now, over here, it might have pass, it might have pass1, and the hash here might be 362, and this one is 363. So as long as it's got the password database of the LAN manager, he's trying to do a password match. Now you can see here, this password and that password have now matched. So he knows the password for the Ian account is pass1. Now, this is called a collision. When you get 2 hashes that match, that is called a collision. Now, after this, I'm going to show you a hash, and I'm going to show you what we need to look for inside the exam. Now, how am I going to stop a pass the hash? We're going to enable Kerberos. Now, Kerberos came out 17th of February 2000, and the database that it is in is called Active Directory. And if I've got a user Ian in here, and I've got his password over here, the first thing you need to know now is this is now encrypted. So let's look at what we need to look for inside the test. We first of all look at the authentication being NTLM. That tells you it's the pass the hash. We then need to look at a hash value, but there's also a tool you can use for pass the hash, and that tool is seen as Hashcat. So if you go to the exam and they're using Hashcat, or you've got NTLM, that is the pass the hash attack. They don't normally say, how can you stop it? They did in the late 501, but remember, you can stop it by enabling Kerberos. So instead of the database being unencrypted, the database is now encrypted. Any questions, ladies and gentlemen? Are we okay with that? Have you taken a picture? Are you still there? Right, so let me come out of this and let me show you a hash. So I'll just set something up on my machine. Right, I found it. I was tidying up my machine the other day, so I don't know where. Right. Unfortunately, I can't make this room go any bigger. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my desktop, and I'm going to make the size of the desktop a little bit larger. So here's my lab 1 hashing. Here is a copy of my data here, and I'm going to paste the data into here. I'm going to go into here. I'm just going to delete that. Now, if I look inside here, here is data. And I've got in here Security+. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take a hash value of that using MD5 hash. So I'm going to browse, and I'm going to look on the desktop at lab1 hashing. I'm going to go to the data. I'm going to go open. And you can see here is the value. So if you think about it, in the Security+ exam, you get some between 75 and 85 questions. You've roughly got a minute a question and 8 minutes spare. So what you don't want to do is start off here with delta 60 and compare it. Always compare the last 3 digits on the end. Now, let me take a copy of that and paste it into here. So anytime I'm looking at a hash, you can see it's hexadecimal, and you're always looking at the last 3 digits on that side. Now let me minimize this, and here is the folder, and let me just drop that into there. Did I tamper with that data? And the answer to that is no, you didn't. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to browse for the data, and you can see it's now moved into here. But when I go to the data, you can see here, when I verify it, 670, 670, those match. Now let me minimize that again, and let me go over here and look at this data now. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to put a space in, and I'm going to go File, and I'm going to go Save. So to the naked eye, this looks as if it's not been tampered. See, at the end of the day, it could be data hidden by a watermark or anything like that. Now let me go in and let me browse this now and pick that data up now, and let's verify it. You can now see the hash values have actually changed. How's that? But remember, when you go to the exam, look at the hash values, last 3 digits on the right-hand side. How's that? Now, let me stop sharing my screen and let me bring back my whiteboard. Now, pass the hash is heavily tested, and one of the things we look for, what we're looking for past the hash, let me change that. Yellow doesn't come up very good on the screen. Let me look at past the hash and key factors. Number 1 is NTLM authentication. Number 2, you stop by enabling Kerberos. Because when you enable Kerberos, it goes from an unencrypted database to an encrypted. And number 3, you could use a tool called Hashcat. And when you look at it, look at the output and look for MD5 or SHA-1, because these are hashing algorithms, or look for a long hash. How's that, guys? Are we quite happy with that? Now, what I want to do now is I want to look at an attack that's been coming in quite a lot. And this is going to be a rapidly expanding virus. So I've got a virus and it's going all over my network. So let's say in my network, I've got 2,500 people. So in the exam with rapidly expanding viruses, they're not asking you to identify the virus this time, but what they're trying to say to you is, how can we mitigate the risk? So, and what we're going to do is we're going to segment the network. And we could segment it by using a router, or we could segment it by using a firewall, which is unusual, but it comes in to the exam. So a lot of the time when it says, I've got a rapidly spreading or a rapidly expanding virus, what is the first thing I'm going to do? First thing, you're going to segment the network. Now, they also use the term access control list. So let me go over and show you what a router and firewall have in common. Does anybody want a picture of this? So we've got over here a router, and we've got over here a firewall. And both these devices are on the edge of your network. And both these devices are network devices using an access control list. Now, what does this mean? When you buy a router or you buy a firewall, by default, there's one rule: deny all. And this is called your access control list. So what you need to do with a firewall or a router, you need to allow some ports. So let's say it's a firewall, and I can go allow HTTP, or I can go allow the port number, which is 80. Now, if you've got traffic, which is file transfer protocol, he uses port 21. If I look at the only rule there is, and my protocol doesn't match it, what then happens is I get the last rule, which is called deny all. But this is called an implicit deny. How's that? So let's go back to my previous screen for the rapidly expanding virus. I'll just redraw it again. So we've got a fast spreading virus. You could segment the network. You could use an access control list, or you could use a firewall or a router. In the last 2 to 3 months, this scenario has been rife. How are we doing? Now let's go on to another one. Is everybody okay? Let's look at another one, a logic bomb. Now, a logic bomb, he needs a trigger. The trigger could be time, it could be script, it could be an event, or it could be a batch file. So this could be 10 a.m. That could be something like ABC.Visual Basic Script. It could be Christmas Day, or it could be a wstart.bat file, and that's a file that will start. And the other thing it could be is a task scheduler, because in Windows, you can actually schedule tasks to run at a certain time. Now, one of the things you've got to watch is time. It cannot be a range. Example, 2 to 4 a.m. It's got to be an actual Pacific time. How are we doing? Now, there's an application attack that's been coming in, and I'm going to teach you this, and it's called refactoring. Now, let's look at an application, and we're going to call it App 1. What the bad guy is going to do is going to go to App 1, and he's going to change the insides. And he is going to attack your network. But the App 1 looks okay. So what happens here? You download app 1, and at this stage, it looks okay. But when you install it, you are attacked. How's that? Please take a picture. I'm not sure if it's actually in my book. So let's go and look at some of a couple of slides I've got left. I need to just share my screen. So at the end here, there's a couple of people I want to make you aware of. And these are Josh Mason. He actually gives free information on cybercrime. So all these people I'm saying to you here, they're all giving you free information. You've then got David Meese. He's called Cybertech Dave, and he does tutorials. And I think he's doing something like 100-day tutorial. And other people to follow is Kevin Aplanaro. He's actually educating entry-level help desk techs. So if you've never worked in IT, he's got hands-on labs. He's got a lot of stuff on YouTube. And one other person that's come to the forefront is a guy called Joe Brochin, and he does ITSM, IT Service Manager, and he's called the ITSM Rhino Crash. And all these guys are given a time up to help other people. So let's go round the room. How did you find the session today?
It was good information. It was really a lot of information to where we can use for the tests, because sometimes it is the way they word the test a lot of times where they can trick you to think is another answer, and your explanation was really well.
See, Dwayne, that's about a third of the chapter 9, but the rest of my book, if you read it, it's actually exactly the way I write it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. The only thing I might have missed out is that refactoring, but I hope we can go back into doing the other sessions. Let's share the screen for people that are not here today. Here are the other sessions that I'm intending to do. 26th of June, I'm doing networking. 3rd of July, we're doing encryption. 17th July, disaster recovery. 27th July, authentication. It's going to be 9 o'clock EST or 1400 British summertime. So I want to thank you guys for turning up today.